All right, Venture Marriage. We're so glad to see you guys again today. You have been faithful in coming. Wow, we have done this for a long time. So we're super happy that you guys are continuing to come. Hope you're getting a lot out of it. We love this conversation. This means you're connecting and hopefully learning things. So I hate to break that up, but I'm going to keep talking. We're glad to see you guys here. So, as you know, we're coming here kind of toward the end of our Keep Your Love On series with Danny Silk. Today we're going to talk about chapter 7, which is communicating in conflict. And we're going to build directly on the things we've been talking about the last few weeks. So if you haven't been with us, we hope you'll go back and at least read the book and get yourself caught up. We're not going to do a full review here like I did last week, but I'm just going to state a couple of things that are kind of foundational here. The first one is we believe that the goal of relationship is connection. And sometimes we get that mixed up, right? The goal of relationship is whatever, get my needs met, or take care of these kids, or pay the bills. No, the goal of your relationship, we get that from God, is connection. God wanted connection with us. And a corollary is the goal of communication is understanding. This can be a big shift for us, right? Sometimes we're trying to be heard, or we're trying to convince you, or we're trying to get our way, or we try to do all kinds of things. Maybe we're trying to protect ourselves, but we really want you to start to say, wait, the goal of this communication is understanding. Even though we do want to get to solution, right? But I'm going to have better information. I'm going to make better decisions once I understand, and once you understand me. Otherwise, who knows? We may be making decisions on some other information. So that critical skill then is listening. We think of the primary, are you a good communicator? You immediately, your brain, probably all of you are like, do I talk well? Can I say what I think? And that is important, and we're going to talk about that too. But the critical part of communication that often breaks down is listening. And so one of the things we want to convince you of today is, and we've talked about this kind of thing, but that there's two active people in a conversation. One of them happens to be speaking, but the other one's listening. And if you are out, right, the obvious thing, you're out hiking by yourself, and there's no one around for miles, you can talk for 45 minutes. Has any communication happened? Well, no, nobody's changed. But you, maybe, or maybe you're talking to God. But so the same way, you need a listener, or the message you're trying to send may not go. So as we talk about this today, we decided to put up James 1:22 on the overhead that you see there. And we really want you to listen now for what can I do? We hope all of you are taking I know everybody's going to take away something different. You're going to be doing something different with it, but be open to what the Holy Spirit is saying to you, and what do I need to do? How can I be not just a hearer, but a doer of this? I've heard a lot of things now. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. How can I do it, right? What am I going to commit to doing? So the last thing we talked about last week was the trust cycle and giving I messages. And so we're going to build on those I messages, right? I feel a feeling when this happened, and I want or I need to feel something else. That's actually, I think it's on your handout there too. So when you have a relationship with another person, conflict is going to happen. If you're both showing up and you're both powerful, you're two different people. And you're going to come to something that you disagree on, or you just see it differently. You're different people, and that's actually good. And so first thing is, don't let it derail you, right? Conflict's going to happen, and the question is, how will we work through it? How will we resolve it? Can we resolve it in a way that brings us actually closer together? We actually think you can, but if you use the wrong tools, conflict's going to drive you apart, right? We've all had that experience when you were driven apart by a conflict and really couldn't resolve it. So we want you to prioritize the relationship this is from Danny Silk, over the issue, whatever the issue is. No matter what the issue is, it's not bigger than your relationship. So your money, your kids, your in-laws, your job, right? All important stuff, but your relationship is even more important. So what I'm going to do for just a few minutes is I'm going to go back. We're mostly in chapter 7 today, but we skipped over in chapter 5 kind of styles of communication. And so that starts on about page 82 or 83, 81, something like that. And if you've never read that, do that. But I'm just going to camp on one. We're going to try to be short here today so that you guys can have more time to interact at your table. But I get this one because this is the first thing, I probably read this book, I'm guessing 10 years ago. I'm not really sure when I was first introduced to this book. It's been quite a while, maybe longer. And I identify most commonly as a passive communicator, right? So especially in conflict, I tend to withdraw, I tend to shut down, I tend to try to make sure everything's good, not by solving it, but by just kind of staying out so the person who's upset can calm themselves down. So I'm going to read to you what he says about passive communication. And the first time I read this, it really brought me up short. And I probably read this to you before, but then I decided this was so important. I read this book to my kids. They were in high school at the time. And my son, who's very similar to me, we were driving down the road and I'm reading this book to them and he said, "What?" And I was like, yes. I don't usually speak out like that, but that's what I thought. So he says, passive communicators attempt to convince the world that everyone else is more important than they are. You probably don't think that's what you're doing if you're a passive communicator. I didn't relate to that, but that he says their core belief is you matter and I don't. I don't think a passive communicator knows that or is trying to say that, but it is the message they're sending, right? Passive people justify devaluing themselves by painting themselves as long-suffering, patient servants who keep the peace and don't ever make problems. Yes, I did that for the first 20 years of our marriage. I was the long-suffering patient servant who kept the peace and didn't make problems. Wasn't I great? He says, they think it's right to have no needs or requirements. But in reality, they are lying cowards. My son was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yes, let's talk about that," right? So in other words, you do have needs. You do have issues. You do need to bring them up. And if you're constantly pulling out and pretending that you have no needs, your spouse can't really have a real relationship with you. They don't know who's there, right? So just leave that with you to struggle with. If you're passive like me, because it took me years to come to grips with that one, it really helped me see that I was part of the problem. Because before that, I credit Danny Silk with this. I did not think I was part of the problem. I thought I was just reacting to Graham, and he was the problem. For 20 years, I would have told you that. And I couldn't see that it was me, too. I think aggressive communication doesn't have to be really loud and try to take over, but an aggressive communicator needs to get heard, needs to be right, needs to have the last word, needs to be heard. So if you identify that way, just think about that. You probably don't mean to be saying this, but what you're communicating is, I matter, you don't, right? And so passive aggressive, there's a lot of talk about this, right? But seem agreeable on the front, but then they're, undermining you behind your back. So we want to convince you to all become, what does it mean to be powerful? It means to be an assertive communicator who says, you matter, but so do I, right? We both matter here. And I'm going to show up, I'm going to be real, I'm going to talk about the real stuff going on, and I'm going to let you be real as well. So in conflict, we want to learn to prioritize the connection instead of the conflict. And when you do, you can reduce that anxiety, stay relational.
So, Carla's no longer a passive communicator. We're all working on it. And we're so grateful that this has just been another one of those tools that's helped us. Toward the end, we're going to talk about some case studies from the Harbman marriage to give you a chance to think about. But just as a teaser, an aggressive communication style doesn't necessarily mean that your words are aggressive. And I'll tell you about one of my stories when we get toward the end. I guess I say that to encourage you to be open to the Holy Spirit showing you more of yourself in whatever area God might be trying to get your attention. Any one of those. Go ahead, Oscar.
In a similar way, just because your words are attitude aggressive doesn't mean you're not passive.
Just because your words are aggressive doesn't mean you're not passive? Okay? Yeah. Yes. And a lot of what will, a thought to add to that, really good comment is, much of this depends on how you are perceived by the receiver. Because we can think something about ourselves all day long, but the message that we're sending, the unspoken message that we're sending, might be one of these. So yeah, we're complicated. It's none of us is only one all the time, forever. We know that's not true. Good. So chapter 7, I would summarize with this sentence: conflict is an opportunity for deeper connection by finding and meeting each other's needs. And I want to. This is not rocket science. This is not brand new. Danny Silk did not come up with this. Chris Hogan said practically the exact same thing when he was here with us last month. He said 2 questions should always. This is straight from one of his outlines. 2 questions should always be in our minds when we interact with others. What do you need? How can I help meet this need? Chris Hogan, last month. And then he goes on to say, when we interact with others, they are asking themselves 2 questions about us. Are we communicating? Does he care? Are we communicating? Do you care? So this is not brand new. What we're trying to do is give us an opportunity to reflect on ourselves and how it is that we go about this enterprise of communication. So, for starters, at the beginning of his chapter, Danny makes some really good points that I want to summarize this way. God is in the process of turning the world right side up. Jesus came to live, to suffer, to die, and to rise from the dead. And because he did that, it really does change everything. The resurrection of Jesus Christ that we celebrate every Lord's Day, and the promise that he's coming back, it is the most radical, earth-altering event in all of human history. I mean, step away from all the phrases that you know from the Bible and think about these words. The deaf hear and the blind see. Humankind walking in darkness has seen a great light. Sins are forgiven and relationships are restored. That's what God does. Instead of enmity and strife, God is now worshiped in spirit and in truth. And relationships are changed. people are actually learning to love each other and to forgive each other with joy in their hearts. That is radical. That is not in the fiber of us apart from the resurrection. So without Jesus, our conflicts just lead to disappointment and strife, hopelessness, despair, agony, and pain. But with Jesus, everything changes. Everything changes. And so, hang on. Conflict with the resurrection becomes an opportunity. It becomes a welcome opportunity to experience the power of God. So, would you like to find a way to be a more powerful individual? Would you like to find a way to live more free, to be yourself? Would you like to grow in confidence about the love that you and your spouse share? Would you like to be more hopeful about your ability to meet your spouse's needs? Would you like that? Would that be a good thing? Yes. And because Jesus rose from the dead, it is possible. That's why he came. To redeem conflict. Isn't that amazing? And so that's the enterprise of history. That's the enterprise of Christ. It's the enterprise of marriage. Conflict is an opportunity for us to become more powerful, more free, more confident, and more hopeful. That is just crazy. And it's true. So, it's an opportunity. Conflict is an opportunity, dear Christian. And it's an opportunity for deeper connection with your spouse. When we're in conflict, what we want to recognize, this is spiritual warfare, that our relationship is at stake. Our relationship is under assault. And so the way that we fight back is that we aim for building up and protecting our connection. Now, most of us, well, I went back and forth on how to say this. Most of us would say that we want connection in our marriages, even in conflict. The problem is that our spouse, the problem is a spouse. Danny Silk has this cute little thing about, so there's a problem here. I wonder who is the problem. Oh, it's you. It's so easy. You're the problem. No. We all have different ways of pursuing the way that we manage conflict. And what we want to say is that conflict is an opportunity for deeper connection. Okay. So, what are some ways that we can typically work against connection, maybe without even realizing it? I want some feedback from you. What are some ways? Defend myself. What's that? Wanting to be right. Stop talking. Okay. Ignoring. So you just pause. Defense, wanting to be right, stop talking, ignoring. Do those things move toward connection? Okay, just checking. What else? What else? Get angry. Lose my temper. Does that tend toward connection? No. Why do we do it? What else? Selfishness. How does that get exhibited? Don't budge, don't give any quarter. Don't listen. Yeah. Judge and accuse. Apathy, not caring. Okay, good. You guys are experts at this. Obstacles to connection. I defend myself if I blame, complain, or explain. If I lose my temper. If I withdraw and hide. If I try to get you to agree with me. If I try to persuade you that I'm right. If I try to win an argument. And I've seen this. I mean, I'm sure I've done all of those. Some of those are my favorite. You're supposed to laugh. Some of those are my favorite. But it... Oh, go back a slide. Yeah, hide, withdraw and hide. Lose my temper. Go for it. To get busy. Very good. Very good. So because Jesus rose from the dead and God is redeeming the cosmos, He's redeeming the universe, He's redeeming your marriage, He's redeeming your heart, conflict is an opportunity for deeper connection with your spouse. Wow. And it's true. And the way for us to connect, to seek that deeper connection, is to focus on finding and meeting each other's needs. This is such a radical way to deal with conflict. Our goal becomes build a deeper connection and find out, what does she need? What does he need? And we've got some great examples about the ways Carla has loved me in the middle of these kinds of things. So, finding and meeting each other's needs in conflict. What we want to do is send the message in all of our conversation, especially in conflict. Am I sending the message, I care about you very much. I want what's best for you. I want to know what you need.
So if we start there, we're going to use this example of a Blu-ray and a TV. And we've talked about this before. This actually comes out of Danny Silk's book. When Dan and Chrissy Migliore were up here, we had this video, this picture up. But I think it's a great little image of the fact that there are two people actively involved in this conversation. And if you remember, back before streaming, how you had to have all those, cables, all the cables plugged into the right place, or you didn't have the sound, or you didn't have the picture, or worse, right? If you're as non-techie as me, that could be pretty frustrating when things weren't hooked up correctly and you didn't know what to do about that. But I think that often we think when we're the listener, we're passive and quiet. We're just listening, letting her talk, letting him talk, let him get it off his chest. I can be that way sometimes, right? But actually, that is the critical skill, right? So if you put your old Blu-ray disc in there, your player is playing it, and it is trying to transmit information, right? And if it's not hooked up correctly, it doesn't matter what you're saying. Nobody's watching a movie that night, right? You're just watching static or getting frustrated. And so the real message needs to be my needs, right? What are my needs? What do I feel? And then what can we do about it? And that, your needs can only be met by a free act of the will. So if you're trying to manipulate the situation to get what you want, you'll find that even when you do get what you want, right, you have this huge argument, he gives in, he does what you want, but it's not satisfying, and you're still frustrated. Like, I just wish you'd take me out for dinner. And you go out for dinner and you're mad the whole night. Anybody done that? I've done that before, right? So what I need to do is communicate what I need. Hey, I'm feeling disconnected. I'm feeling lonely. I'm struggling with my emotions. Can we talk about what we could do about that, right? I would really love to go out for dinner. And he gets to choose whether he wants to do that or not. My favorite example of this is one I've also used here before, that I said for 20 years to Graham when we were in the middle of an intense conversation, we're trying to work something out. I would feel very frustrated because we would get to a certain place and I felt like we couldn't get to the underlying issue. And when I tried to get down to the underlying issue, I felt like he would deflect. So I know I've said this to you before. My phrase was, we never talk about it. Okay? That was shorthand, and I never thought about this very consciously. I had not learned any of this stuff. I really meant to be saying, hey, I feel really frustrated that we're not talking about the big issue. I feel scared. I feel lonely. I feel overwhelmed, right? But I never said that. I just said, we never talk about it. And obviously, we're in the middle of a conversation, so I didn't mean we never talk. Like, that seems obvious to me, right? I mean, I'm not... but it took 20 years for him to finally say to me once how angry that made him, because he's working really hard to listen to me there. And he's trying to learn new skills, and he felt completely dismissed and like hopeless, and like I was saying all these things.
Could I comment on that?
Please.
No. No, what she's saying is exactly right. It took me years to figure out that that was a trigger. It really, I'm still stupefied. When something gets revealed to you and you see it plain as day, you wonder, why didn't I see that? Why didn't I know that about myself? I'm just telling you, that's what happens. What happened to me is I didn't realize that was a big trigger. And then I had to build the courage to say it. So, go ahead.
And if he never figured that out and never told me what's actually going on inside him, I'm just interpreting, right? I'm looking at the behavior. I've never connected that phrase. I just feel like when I'm trying to get to the real issue, he's going to explode. And I feel like the story I'm telling myself is he's just refusing to talk about the real things. He's intentionally trying to keep me from getting what I feel like I need. He's just like, I'm telling myself all of these stories, right? I've never identified what I need. I've never asked him what he needs. And I just think that that is such a great example of, I'm sending the same message for 20 years. Can we please talk about the real issue because I feel scared? He's never heard it. We've never communicated.
Another aspect of this is that this really was a great example, typifies the struggle that we were having in every part of our marriage. What we've just described to you, it was just so frustrating because I didn't feel understood and she didn't feel understood. Well, Jesus rose from the dead. And now we live on the other side of the resurrection regarding this issue. And it is phenomenal that she knows that about me and that I know that about me. We are more powerful, we are more free, we are more confident, and we are more hopeful because of the resurrection, because God was merciful enough to show us both about this conflict.
So you can see it really does improve, right? Because you're like, oh, I understand you better. Oh, that's what that is. Oh, I can learn not to say that, right? Oh, I need to talk about me. What a revelation, right? Oh.
All right. Whew. Thank you, dear. Do you want me to do that? I think you. So, okay. Well, there it is. we're trying to give bullets to help give something to hold on to regarding the kind of interaction that we just described. But it's about having a servant's heart, being prepared to adjust, to sacrifice, and to really think that you're on a quest. So the first example that I wanted to share is that, from my perspective, one of the biggest dynamics in our relationship is that I would say or do something and Carla would get upset. And the easiest thing for me to do was to get defensive, to blame, complain, or explain. Mostly explain, because I felt like she just didn't understand what I meant. And it was as clear as day. Look out that window. See how clear it is? It's clear as day that Carla just didn't understand me. And if she understood me, then everything would be okay. So why can't you just understand me? That's not what I meant. So guys, women, does that tend toward connection? No. It tends toward frustration. And if I'm doing that, then I'm not on a quest to find out what Carla wants or what she needs or to understand how she feels. And we're not working together.
Or even to say what you want and need and feel, right? So it works both ways.
Yes. The other one that we've talked about a couple years ago here was the clipboard story. I don't know if some of you have been around a while. The clipboard story is that we had a situation where I was really mad. And I raised my voice, lost my temper. We're in the bedroom, and Carla walks out of the bedroom and walks back in with a clipboard and a piece of paper and a pen and says something like, "Wow, Graham, you're really angry. Help me understand better." Wow. That was just so incredible that she would do that.
If you've been with us, that was the courageous conversation, was what I brought in, right, as a set of questions. Listen. I'm like, okay, I got no idea what's going on here, right? What's your most pressing issue, Graham?
Yeah, and that's what happened. I felt it. Now, she did all of these things. She had a servant's heart. She was on a quest to find out. Her husband is in distress. He's in crisis. I don't see him this angry hardly ever. We got to work together and figure this out. Tell me more. What's going on? Oh my goodness. That was such an incredible experience. Keep moving. 140. Yes, that's probably enough. We've got more examples. If you take us to lunch, and we'll give you lots of examples.
We got tons of stories.
What we want to do is give you a chance to do this yourself. Where's that? So let's see. So discussion questions. Just go through these questions. Be honest. Share. Talk. Be gracious to your spouse. If you learn something new from your spouse today, that's a good thing. Jesus is risen from the dead. You have an opportunity to hear and be gracious.
The more you can interact with these ideas, we find we learned this like 12 years ago, and we're still learning it, right? So the more you can interact with it, the more you can see how it actually works in your relationship. What do I tend to do? Right? Not what does my spouse tend to do? What do I tend to do? And how can I work on that? I don't have to change everything, but how can I start to improve that and be part of the solution? So
it's 10 minutes to 2. I want to give us probably 20, 25 minutes to just talk about those 6 questions. All right? And then at about 2:15, we'll stop and give you a chance to do the couple exercises, just practice some iMessages that's on the next page there. All right? Lord bless you. Speak the truth in love. Share, encourage, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
That we're not communicating well here. I really want to, right, I care about you very much. I want to figure this out. I want to hear what you have to say, whatever. But I think the temptation is to be like, so I want you to do, right? I feel sad because you aren't spending any time with me. I want you to spend every night with me the next week, right? Or whatever. I'm just, just beware of that. What you're going for is you want to feel a feeling of connection. Your feelings aren't controlling you, but they are giving you information, right? So I feel sad and connected. I want to feel connected. And we can get to suggestions. Can we talk about that is really probably your best? Can we talk about that? You can certainly make requests, right? Is it possible that we could, I would really appreciate it if you would, but don't turn it into, I feel this way, I feel really sad, I think it's your fault, so if you will just do all these things, right? And of course I'm exaggerating, but we do this a little bit, right? You're not trying to turn even an iMessage into a demand. There's a way to turn an iMessage into a demand, and you still get that defensive reaction. You want to have a servant's heart. Hey, this is actually vulnerably how I'm feeling. Could you help me with that? I want to feel connected to you. And we will get to suggestions on what to do. In fact, there's a list. We gave you a bunch of information here, but we really don't have time to unpack it all on the communication tips. Some of it came from, Graham's going to talk about that. So I just wanted to say that. I think it's easy to turn even an iMessage into a demand. Try not to do that.
So take a look at those start items under the structured sentence, I feel blank. Pick a word from the soul word list that's next in the handout. Keep it light. We're practicing the mechanics of how to do this form of communication. Select an area of life. Pick a few feeling words that describe your current experience and explain. So it's 17 after. I want to give you about 4 minutes per person in the couple, and we'll come back and have some concluding remarks. So enjoy some time together. And God is all about giving us power. Power to live for Him. So that passage, freedom, Romans 6 is about being free from the bondage of sin. Confidence, that we have boldness and access with confidence through our faith in Jesus Christ. And that hope, man, just spend a month on Psalm 33 or Psalm 32 and immerse yourself in just the beauty, the wonder, the glory that God loves you and wants the best for you and wants to see your marriage be not just everything you want it to be, but everything that He wants it to be. This is where the transformation happens, when we meet with God individually and open our hearts to Him and give Him that opportunity to minister truth and grace deep in our souls. So all of this is window dressing. It's all window dressing if we're not in the Scriptures, the Holy Spirit transforming us one by one. And so please do that and enjoy it. And then there's a page there on communication tips. There's just so much information. And then there's a page on listener questions. Take some time. You could journal and go through some of those things. You could practice them. Talk about it with your spouse, maybe on the way home. It's just some tips, some things to think about and talk about.